Welcome to the Sunday Supplement Mind Emission on the Toad Cam from the Toad Bunker in somewhat sunny and very humid New York City. Okay, we need a mind hack. We need a simple, doable, affordable, mind-expanding hack that you can put to immediate practical use for substantial personal gain. It's amazing how many great little hacks there are, great little consciousness practices that you can immediately go engage in. And if you're willing to take the time, do what's required, focus on it, carefully experience and note what's happening in your mind, you can make some rapid and useful and significant changes. And what do I mean by significant and useful and rapid? I mean rapidly change your earning power, rapidly change your learning power, rapidly change the level and plane and form that your consciousness operates on in ways that allow you to rapidly gain substantial advantages, okay? That's what I call a good deal. It's not just out there in some kind of, whatever they want to call it, some kind of fantasy or some kind of new age squish language, but we're talking about real world, real competence gaining skills. So here's your Sunday exercise. This is very, very simple. It's very doable. I'll give you a quick, specific example of this. Not that you should necessarily want to read this book. This book has a lot to do with the rise of the banking oligarchy in the United States. So I'm simply using this by way of example. Very rich with information, full of names, densely referenced. I mean, my habit when I read is to put a orange stripe from an orange marker wherever there's a proper name, okay? So I can track what people are talking about by name. I can sort by name or sort by identity. That's a very important trick. And then information that's a body of information or insight that's particularly important, I highlight with a yellow marker. But so this is one of my sub-strategies. So whenever a name comes up, I can very quickly go and find every other time that name was mentioned. And this is a hugely important study skill that every kid ought to learn, and every kid ought to learn how to practice, because it makes going back, and a name will sometimes be mentioned as the last name or mentioned in passing. You see, where have I heard that before, or where does that fit into the story? And that's why you can see that this is a very, very useful skill to have. So you use one color of highlighter, orange highlighter for proper names, another color of highlighter, I'd like to use the Dayglow yellow for a chunk of information that's really highly significant or summarizes the thinking or clarifies or has special value. And then in a third case, I use a fuchsia marker if there's a term of art or a phrase or an expression that is I need to look up or has specific meaning or has some kind of novel way of expressing itself or is useful in that context. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just tracking my own natural filters and applying those filters directly to the book. So you think, well, okay, that's a nice little study skill. Get a lot of mileage out of that one if you do it consistently. But here's the other thing. Many of these books also come out in auditory form, in the CD form in this case. I happen to like the CDs. You can also get a lot of them through audible.com on MP3 downloads. So what I discovered was that if I listened to the same material that I read, so say I read a chapter or two chapters or whatever it is, and then go and listen to the exact same material on a CD. So I'm listening to it through auditory channels, and I try to get this very close. So say if within 24 to 48 hours I've read a chapter or two in the book, I want to immediately go and listen to the exact same material as it's read on the CD or the MP3. And what you will notice is that you process information differently. You structure it, you encode it, you think about it, it works on your mind very differently. If you're like me, if you have anything going on like I've got going on, and I assume people do, have some kind of neurological equivalent, the auditory input, the heard, listened to storytelling quality is going to have a very different impact, and it's going to encode differently, and it's going to operate in different parts of the mind than the lexical written part. I tend to think that the spoken part will tend to have more right hemisphere activation, because the mind has got to do a lot more work generating and maintaining and holding contexts in place, where much of that contextual holding is done for you in the written form. So listening to it and reading it will strengthen and activate and focus different parts of your mind. So do that and read it and then listen to it in close succession, as close as possible, and make sure it's a book that's challenging, that's demanding, cognitively demanding. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you could read in your sleep, so to speak. You don't want that. You want stuff that's going to come up kind of to your performative edge of what you're confident about or what you feel like you're able to deal with. Something that challenges your sense of the boundary of who you are or what you're about. You want to push yourself right out to the edge of that kind of, right on the edge of your comfort zone. So find that kind of material, the stuff that takes you out of your day-to-day comfort zone, puts you at the edge of your beliefs about where your competence bounds are, your ability to master information. But don't go so far that it's completely overwhelming and your mind just doesn't know how to sort the information. So you really want to be sort of challenging your sorting. And so what you want to do is then find such a book, or books, many books I recommend, read it, then process it auditorially, listen to it, read, listen, read, listen, read, listen, read, listen. And do that habitually. Do that as model Tony Robbins. Okay, this is where Tony's really good. This is one place I'm very much in alignment with Tony Robbins, is the stuff you do a lot, the stuff you do repetitively, the stuff you do habitually, the stuff you do ritualistically is the stuff you're going to get very good at. The important thing is to do it consistently. Make it a habit. Say, commit yourself to reading a certain number of challenging books that you can say get on a recorded form and listening to the same. And that's where the really deep learning is, when you start comparing and noticing how the written learning and the auditory learning process, and observe how they process and observe how you process them, and then how they kind of converge on some core understanding in there. So that's a simple, high educational value, get a lot of value, maximize your learning. I wouldn't even call it a trick. I would just call it a basic thing to do if you want to better yourself. And the people who will get ahead in life, and the people who will transcend and get out of their limits or out of their ruts or out of their traps or whatever, are the people who use their mind in a structured, disciplined, habitual way with goals in mind. And if one of the goals, the intent, or the outcome frame of this is to develop a much stronger understanding of how you think about and represent information and internalize that information and are able to access it and articulately, intelligently speak of it and help you orient yourself to the world. So, read, listen, read, listen, read, listen, read, listen, bam, claps, bam, claps, bam, claps. That's a heck of a self-development practice that will move you ahead in life.